Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutrabhashya Kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punaha Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murtibheda Vibhagine Vyomavat Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Gukarastu Andhakaro Vai Rukarastu Nivartakaha Andhakara Nirodhitvat Gururitya Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvisha vahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we start a new topic today, and I was thinking that as much as possible, not absolutely certain, that the Tuesday night class should focus on sadhana, and hopefully in small segments. That doesn't take too long. So we'll try to find different segments that highlight the methods of reaching our goal. Not the goal itself, but the methods of reaching the goal. Of course, as you know, sadhya itself is a sadhana. The Saturday class, for example, is sadhya as a sadhana. But here, this is purely as a sadhana, not sadhya as a sadhana. Sadhya becomes what is to be proven, becomes secondary, and what is the means for proving things is the primary, that is the sadhana. So I was just looking at some possibilities, and I saw a book by Swami Akhandananda, which is called Vyavahara Shuddhi. Right here. This is the book. I have an older version of that. And I think that some of you recently also got copies of this. Vyavahara Shuddhi. So this book consists of two series of discourses by Swamiji, 1 year apart. So one series of discourses for 1 week was in 1981 in November, and the second series was also in the same month, November, in 1982. It's interesting, I was at the PRC at that time, just looking at the time period when he taught all this. So these were done as weekly classes to the general public in Calcutta. He was sponsored by one of his sponsoring families, and so he gave this talk. So it's interesting to see that the audience that he was talking to was a general public, generally adults, could have been some children also, but from all walks of life, and not necessarily students of Vedanta prior to listening to him, although they must have some tendencies to listen to it, otherwise why would they even come? But in any case, there was a general public. And so many of his books, not all of them, but many of his books are of that type, of how he approaches the description of the various topics to a general public. And I make that a point because my job in translating these verses and articulating these verses from a book. Although I must say that in India, in Swami Maheshananji's and Swami Akhandanandaji's case, the transcriptions in Hindi, the accuracy of it, the error-free nature of which is very impressive. I must say that. Sentences are complete, paragraphs are annotated, and I think I heard somewhere I read that Swamiji would be very carefully scrutinizing the final draft. He would not let it out until it was satisfied. Kind of reminds me of the writing of the book that I did with Swamiji, Swami Viditatmananda, on Kaivalya Upanishad. And what was revealing to me was how much he examined the manuscript himself and took so much pains to edit it and to correct it. And so there was a lot of back and forth between him and I that went on for months, possibly even more than a year, and took a lot of the time. And so something similar is done here also in these cases. In any case, I think what I'm saying is that the discourses are very accurately described, and are very readable. And of course, Swamiji's language, his Sanskritized Hindi, is just absolutely marvelous. So that is the book. So he gave these discourses in 2 years. So the overall, so they published this book after compiling the transcriptions from both the years, 1981 and 1982. And so there are 7 discourses in each. So each day he will give one discourse for a week. The title of the first book is Yajna, Dana and Tapa. So that's the first book, Yajna, Dana and Tapa. And I would say that almost all of this content of these books are from the Bhagavad Gita, from referencing the various concepts, various passages from the Gita. And so that's the first one. The second one is called Asangata. Asangata. So Asangata means non-attachment. And in reading the books, the reading both the books, both sides of the book, I thought we would spend some time just looking at a single topic called Asangata. We might do the Yajna, Tapa and Dhanam later, perhaps, we'll see. But for now, somehow my eye went to this one here. This is about 72 pages and 7 lectures again, 7 discourses. So I thought we would do that. All right, so with that, let's at least give you an introduction to it. And as you know, the next 2 weeks I'm not going to be able to hold this class Next week is my wife is having some knee surgery, and then the following week is the 4th of July. So we will probably only meet on July 11th when we really begin the proper study of this topic. But I think we can have a very good introduction to this topic today, and then we will continue on with it. So that is my choice for the topic for this week, asangata, the very attainment of non-attachment. Okay, all right. So the non-attachment of the Atma is a fact. It is not a promise. It is not a philosophy. It is not anything else that you might describe it as. It is a fact. And it is a fact that we do not recognize. In my life, when I'm acting, my acting of the experiences of my life is not with asangata. It is non-attachment. And here what we are talking about is not relative non-attachment. It is absolute non-attachment. So the absolute non-attachment could be likened to the waking up from a dream. So there is no question of attachment to the remnants of the dream. No question. In fact, you cannot even remember what you were dreaming about. Whereas in our laukika vyavahara, vyavahara of course means transactions, attitudes, relationships. So in those, there can be relative non-attachment. You may be very attached to a person or a grandkid or something, and you may not be attached to other people. So there is some relativity of attachment. But here, the non-attachment that we are aiming for in this context is absolute non-attachment. So the absolute non-attachment is not something that we can relate to. How can you have absolute non-attachment in our lives? While we are awake and transacting with the world, experiencing the world, how is it possible to be non-attached? So this is not a concept that I can relate to right away. And yet, Shastra tells us that is really the truth. And so, this sadhana, before I go to this sadhana, so to go from where we are today, where we have considerable attachment to various things, from that stage to go to absolute non-attachment is too long a step. You cannot climb that height all of a sudden. So there needs to be some steps that will enable you to slowly grow into that step of total non-attachment. Only then we can transpose ourselves from one state to the other. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to do it. It's kind of like Swami Paramarthananda had given this example that suppose, sometimes you go to these concerts where the stage is like 3 or 4 feet high. So much so that the first seat on where the people are sitting, they have to look up like this. They are not the best seats. When we have our Aim for Seva events, Sushma and others, they want to make sure that the best seats are a little bit farther off. Why? Because the stage is so high that you cannot really see, you only see the feet of you have a very skewed view of the performers. Anyway, Swami Paramarthananda had given that if that kind of a case is there, where the stage is so high, then some steps have to be provided. Otherwise, you cannot jump from one to the other. So similarly here, we are at a stage of mostly sangata, not asangata, mostly attachment. We may have some relative non-attachment, but most of the time we are very attached. And to go from there into total non-attachment is too big a step. So really speaking, what these classes will provide to us are some steps that we can take. We can gradually rise up to the point where we become really qualified for total non-attachment. So that's the sequence of what these classes are all about, these discourses are all about. So here we start with, as I mentioned, really all these ideas are directly related to the passages and the ideas and the concepts of Bhagavad Gita. So here also the whole thing is about really just a explanation of what Sri Krishna is asking Arjuna to do, what God wants us to do, He gives us the right advice. So here we see that one of the key passages which we should keep front and center as we study this is the one which says, Gunaha guneshu vartante iti mattvana sajjate. Indriyani indriyartheshu vartante iti mattvana sajjate. So very briefly what it means is that we should recognize that the various gunas, and we will define what the gunas are in a minute, but the various gunas, they are interacting with each other as part of Prakriti, as a part of nature. And the Indriyas, the very sense organs and the organs of action, are interacting with the various Vishayas, objects. And this is also part of Prakriti. It is just going on. Gunaha guneshu vartante, indriyani indriyartheshu vartante, iti matva. Knowing this, considering this and understanding this very clearly, you do not get bound by them. Na sajjate. You do not get entangled in it. Things are happening and you don't need to get involved. So this is kind of like the start of the whole thing. And we'll go into the more details of what does it mean in terms of my attitudes, my life, my relationships with others, experiencing sukha dukkha, my attitudes on progress, all of those kinds of things we will now examine. But this is really the main starting point. Gunaha guneshu vartante. So what it really says is, now let us understand the elements of this sentence. What is a guna? Guna, not gunaha. Guna is a plural. What is a guna? Guna means one which is uniquely identifies a quality. So a quality which uniquely distinguishes from other qualities is called guna. So East is one thing different from the West. So East guna, West guna. Smallness is different from bigness. So like that, these are called guna, qualities that can be of any different types, and we will see that. So here we know very well that the entire Shrishti, the entire setup in the world, is a mixture of three main gunas. We know very well, Sattva guna, Rajoguna, and Tamoguna. So these are the three gunas which in various combinations make the differences between one type of experience versus another type of experience, one type of human being from another type of human being. So there these, as the Bhagavad Gita points out so well, the gunas are not only just in objects but also in people, situations. But the three gunas can be maintained in all of them. So there is something goodness, something which is very exciting, Rajoguna, and something which is dark and stable, not moving, which is Tamoguna. So these qualities are comprising the entire Prakriti. So this word Prakriti is an important one in our analysis. So we will see that today. So the verse, the word Prakriti actually means Prakarshena Kritihi. Kritihi means, as the knowers of music know, a kriti means a composition. The Indian musicians will say, I will now tell you the following kriti. Kriti here means a composition, and so this composition could be some words and usually is a defined raga, and there could be some variations of the raga. This is called kriti, one which is done, which is purposeful. But if this kriti is done extremely well, then it becomes prakriti. The nature is very well done. Nothing is random. Everything is extremely well constructed. This is called prakriti. And so what kriti is, prakriti is the three gunas in various ways that we experience in our life. Now, what needs to be appreciated are several aspects of this prakriti which consists of guna. Several aspects. One is that this has been going on forever. So this, in Shastra, it is all anadi. We do not have a big bang. We don't have something which is coming out of nothing. Yes, there are phases where everything goes back to a state where it is not visible, very much like the night. So the night is, there is absence of anything, but doesn't mean there is a total absence of the person. It is simply the activity of the person is hidden from himself, herself, and others for a while. That's all. This is called laya. So similarly, there is a pralaya. So the pralaya is simply that the entire Prakriti is hidden for the time being. Goes back to its seed form. But the point is that the Prakriti is never not there. And so this way of the vistara, the projection of the whole world is always there in one form or the other. And so what happens is that there is a certain sequence. So when you, like, for example, when you first wake up from the night, your buddhi wakes up, and the first thought is, I am. Then the next thought is, I am this, I am that. The next thought is, where am I? What day is it today? Then the thoughts are, what is it that what am I supposed to do today? So there is a sequence involved. Similarly here also, in the entire creation, there is a sequence. So when the birth of the day of Brahmaji is, then you have Mahattattvam. So Mahattattvam means the overall buddhi. From that buddhi comes all the differences, desha, kala, vastu, all the bhinnatvam from comes. Then ahankara, the I notion. And then all the tanmatras. So these are all the great elementals. So the words tanmatra, sparsha tanmatra, rupa tanmatra, gandha rasa tanmatra. So these are the 5 major elements. Then the 10 indriyas, 5 jnana indriya and 5 karma indriyas. Those come up. Then the 5 vishayas. So these are what is called the 23 tattvas are immediately born. Buddhi, ahankara, manaha, 5 tanmatras, 10 indriyas and 5 vishayas. 23 tattvas. This is what Prakriti is. So this birth is called Prakriti. And this is how the whole system is. Variations. Another thing is that none of that is really non-changeable. It's all changing. Kind of like the flow of a river. It's a continuous flow of a river. So this is what Prakriti is. Then, so if you look at the tattvas, you can say that there are 3 classes of tattvas. One is Prakriti. One is Ishvara, who keeps everything working. There is no surprises. There is no mistakes. This is order in the whole universe. What time did what temperature does the water boil? This is predetermined. It's not random. So this is done by a very intelligent being who's responsible for the entire Prakriti working in a very orderly fashion, and that is called Ishvara. So that's the second segment of the Tattva. So first one is Prakriti, second one is Ishvara. The third one is the Jiva, you and I. And so here now we can see one of the important concepts in this unfolding of the Asangata. What happens is that the Jiva takes the entire Prakriti, which is a free-flowing set of changes that are occurring in the universe, chooses some of them, selects some of them, and makes it look as though this is mine. Really speaking, they don't belong to anyone. They are just going on. But due to some ignorance or whatever, the Jiva owns some of them. It's kind of like, the river is flowing and you take a vessel, and then the river flowing into the vessel becomes yours. You surround it with some kind of a minus. This is my water. Something like that. So this is what happens, is that the Prakriti is pocketed. It's kind of like pocketed by the various jivas, and they become, and he owns it. This is me, this is mine. Now that's what happens. And as a result of that, so this is what is also called, as you know by now, called Jiva Shrishti. So you have a Ishvara Shrishti, which is going on. The whole Prakriti is right in front of everybody. This is not mine. This belongs to Ishvara. But then I superimpose my own sense of ownership. And along with the ownership, then I have feelings about it. I like this, I don't like it. This one is mine, this one is not mine, this is yours. So sense of individuality, and from the sense of individuality, a natural consequence of sukha dukkha comes in. Because when you impose individuality, then it is with respect to something else. So you evaluate where I am, how am I doing, am I better than others, worse than others, am I better than what I used to be, like that. So all the value systems come in, actions come in, all because of the fact that the Prakriti is now been bottled up by me for myself. And from this gunas, from the various gunas means tendencies, the various parts of the whole creation. From those gunas, karmas are born. Then I make judgments that I need to do this because I don't like that, and I need to get better, therefore I need to do this, etc., etc. Karmas are born. Then from the karma, then of course, so that's called kartritvam, the doership of the karma. And from there, results are also given to me based on my limited actions, and those are called bhoktritvam, or sense of enjoying or suffering, as the case may be. And this is what my life becomes. I become a karta bhokta, karta bhokta, karta bhokta. And I give up the body, not giving up this identification as a karta bhokta. Results in life after life after life, in one form or the other, sometimes going up, sometimes going down, struggling, repeating in circles, all those kinds of things that we are aware of. Okay. So one thing we can now say, that the key to become asangaha, asangata, non-attachment, the key to it is to highly diminish and dilute, if not eliminate, I and my attitude. The I attitude is I am a limited person. The my attitude is the consequence of me taking myself to be a limited person. Here, someplace else, not in this particular segment, Swami Akhindananda had talked about, it was very useful for me to meditate on that concept. Beautifully done. What he said was, relative to this topic, that all the various thoughts and attitudes that I have are a consequential software because of the mistake that I make, that I am a limited person. So this was a very, very helpful way of looking at it. What he said was that the basic mistake that I'm a limited person naturally gives rise to what kind of a limited person I am. That's the software. The hardware is that I'm a limited individual. That's the basic mistake. But then you cannot just keep going around in the world and saying, I'm a limited person, I'm a limited person. You don't do that. But all of your attitudes, conclusions, your behavior stems from the fact that you are a limited person. This was really important for me to see. So in some ways, just by trying to collect and to correct my thoughts and struggle to be better, all those kinds of attempts, it'd be much better if we concentrate on the very basic mistake itself. Am I a limited person? And all the software will automatically take care of it. This was the tenor of his advice, and I thought it was a very good way to look at it. So anyway, coming back to this topic here, so this is what happens, that I own up certain portions of the Prakriti and call it me and mine. Oh yeah, so this is what I was saying. That if we define it that way, then we should also see that the way out is the key to way out. The question is, how do I open the keys? The doors are not opening. And here all the acharyas, all the shastras says, ultimately what you need to do is to either completely eliminate, but not necessary to completely eliminate, substantially reduce the I and my way of looking at things. This is the way. So now the question is, how do I do that? Because that's not practical. I have a house, I have to protect that house, I have to pay mortgage on it. You cannot say it doesn't matter to me. I have a body, I have to take care of it, my health is important to me. And so this is mine. If I don't consider it to be mine, how can I take care of it? And so this is not possible for me to simply accept. And we know that. We know that. It's not as though you are a weirdo. No, you're very normal. So obviously, what it really means is that Swami Dayananda used to call it Shobhana Adhyasa. So this is part of the whole thing. We'll go into this in more detail. But Shobhana Adhyasa means looking at me and mine beyond what is necessary. I remember Swami Dayananda had given this example. I remember this so well. He says, you know what happens sometimes? When you buy a new piece of clothing that, I need a shirt. So you buy a shirt. So there are two reasons why you buy a shirt or some other piece of clothing for that matter. Two reasons. One is that your current shirt is torn. And the whole supply of shirts is diminishing, so you need to replenish it. When you do that, you have a different attitude towards buying the shirt. It is meant more for the utility. And your way of looking at the shirt is also very different. Why? Because if you buy a shirt for the other reason, which is I don't need it, but it'll be nice to have this shirt. This is what happens sometimes if you don't go to the shop with a very fixed shopping list in your mind. Like, you go there and say, I need this, this, and this. That's what you look for. Buy it and come back. But now if you're aimlessly looking around and you say, oh, that's a nice looking shirt. That happens to me sometimes. Is that I have certain colors and styles that I like. And I end up buying something. I haven't bought in for a long time, so things have changed. But when I used to shop, what I would find is that I will get something which I already own. And my wife will say, I thought you had this shirt already. And I'll say, really? And I go to the closet and yes, something like was already there. And I says, oh my God, what did I do? So there you buy something for its likes and dislikes. And you feel, this is a nice shirt, that'll be wonderful. So now what happens is this closes the gap to Shobhana Adhyasa. So what happens is that you wear the shirt. Now you are very cognizant of this new shirt. So when you go around, you kind of expect people to notice it. And somehow or the other, you always make it very obvious that, look at my shirt. We have a friend, a lady friend, who just loves her diamonds on her fingers. And she's a rich person, and she can afford some very expensive big diamonds. And she's very fond of showing it off. So the way we see it, my wife and I would have a glance at each other when we would see her doing it. She would look at this while other people are talking and so on. And what she wants to show is, look, I am looking at this. I hope you also look at this and admire it and admire me. So anyway, when you buy this new shirt, you feel, if the shirt is a necessary replacement, you don't have this showing off thing because it is a utilitarian thing. But if it is something which is purely due to your Shobhana Adhyasa, then you feel, oh my God, what a nice shirt that I'm wearing. And I hope that people can notice it. And if you come back and nobody notices it, you feel disappointed. So we go back to it, and it says that, when you say that how can he's not practical, how can I say that I don't have attachment because I am responsible for things I need to have attachment. So there it says you have to make a judgment between what is absolutely necessary. You have to take care of your body. You have to take care of your house. Sure, that's not a problem. But any kind of a Shobhana Adhyasa, this is my son. See how well he's doing? He's so good in studies. My grandchildren, oh my gosh. I haven't seen anybody like this. They are one of the best. And so there you are setting it up for unnecessary determination of individuality. Because what you're doing essentially is reconfirming your individuality. We want to make it diminish and go away, as we will see. But you're going in the opposite direction. Even when you don't need to, you grab onto it and say, this is me, this is mine. So this is what is talked about. So in doing so, what are the methods for me to diminish my me and mine attitude? So this is what Swamiji talks about here. So he says, the key to doing this, and this is what the Bhagavad Gita also discusses, and so this is an explanation of Bhagavad Gita, is to turn your karmas into dharma. Because you have to act. You cannot stay without acting, without action, without doing things. Not possible. It's very natural. So the whole question is, what kind of action are we talking about? So here, there are two sets of paths that you can go. We've been discussing this in other classes also. So one is what is called anushasanam. Anushasanam. Anushasanam means that you follow the way of leading your life as suggested by our scriptures. And this has, various, is not just a simple thing. It just basically means that all our varnas and ashramas, they're the two axes. What kind of gunas you're born with, stay within that guna, maximize it. And what kind of an ashrama you have in your life. There are 4 ashramas, so maximize it. So this is what the Shastra points out, is a structured, systematic way of leading your life. And this is what is called converting a karma into dharma. Dharma means this is what my duty is. This is who I am. And whether I'm having a problem or not doesn't really matter. Problems are necessary. It's a necessary part of all karmas. And don't let any obstacles throw you off where you go in a totally different direction. Stay the course. And if you have to change, you have to change, but don't be flighty. So this is what is called turning a normal set of options called karma into a disciplined way of life called dharma. This is the key, second key. So the first key is to dilute the I and mine, and the second key is the way to do that is to follow what should be done rather than what you want to do. And so sometimes because of our vasanas, we just want to do some things because it feels good to me. So here the Shastras say that any kind of karma, any kind of leading a life based on vasanas is leading you nowhere. You're already lost and you will stay lost, and you're not making any progress to get out of this maze. And if you want to do that, then do not just blindly follow your vasanas. The vasanas are there because of Prakriti. Because there's a certain flow of things, you were born into it, and it's going to continue. The question is, where is it leading to? What do you need to do? And what you need to do is to turn the karma into dharma, and the way to do that is to choose a structured anushasanam suggested by the Shastra. And what it really means is that the other thing, another part of this is that you need to make the gunas in such a way that the sattva guna becomes pradhana in your life. Yes, there will be rajoguna and tamoguna. That is unavoidable and not necessary to avoid it. But the principles by which you should live should be based on sattva guna. I think it was one example there are not lots of examples in my life, but the one that really has become very, very peaceful and loving for us is that, so there are three of us. There's my brother, younger brother, myself, and my older sister. So there were three of us. And when my mom and dad were retiring, and they were not very rich, but they had a house in New Delhi, which was worth something. And so the question was, how do they divide up between the three children who were all very friendly to each other? We never had any problems. So I remember one time in my visit to New Delhi, my mother said, we want to let you know about our decision on how we're going to distribute the property. And the way we're going to do that is, your sister is the one who has been staying in New Delhi with us, close to us, and you and your brother have both gone to the US, and we know that you support us, but it's not as though you have really taken good, continuous as much care as your sister has done. So as a consequence, what we're going to do is we're going to give 2 parts to your sister, and in the third part we'll give you half and half, one to your brother and one to you. So we get 1/6 each, and my sister got 2/3 of the property. I remember she's talked to us. And she talked to me first before talking to my younger brother, and said, we just wanted to tell you about that and just see what you think. So I said, that's wonderful. You're absolutely right. I said, my sister is the one who really took care of you so much. And, we are independent. And I think you're absolutely doing the right thing. No doubt about it. But she was a little surprised, and she says, really? Don't you want to think about it? Maybe talk to your spouses and so on. I said, no. This is your decision, and I think it is the right decision. Just do it. And she did it. And when recently my mother died, not recently, but my mother died, that's how the property was done. So I'm very happy that Sattva Guna took over in my thinking. So it is not Rajo Guna where I say, hey, it should be 1/3 each. Why should it be like this? And sometimes in India, you feel that the women should not be given the same amount as the men. You can have feelings like that. And I tell you, we have seen in our lives, there are so many family problems, it's unbelievable. I think there are more problems within families than with friends. With friends, you don't have any sense of me and mine. So again, the same thing comes in, me and mine. But with families, and especially then you get married, your spouses have some saying. I tell you, I have seen so many cases where brothers are not talking to each other. It is just pain in everybody's life. Not one, I've seen so many of them. And just by a simple Sattva Guna, wouldn't I have had to like to have a greater share of the property? Yes, I would have. But I think it was not the right thing. What she did was the right thing. And I said, fine, do it. So this is really what Bhagavad Gita is talking about, that please. And you know, the thing is that since that decision that my mother and father made, there has been nothing but absolute love between the brothers and sisters. Total. Unfortunately, I lost her recently. But it was, you know, we would call each other and our children are good friends. And what a wonderful life we have had just because of this small thing. What a tragedy it would have been if some people came and divided us. Then you have such consequences. This is unbelievable. So this is what the advice of the Krishna's Bhagavad Gita is, that please make sure that Sattva Guna remains pradhana. So then there is another section which will take some time to talk about, but I think we will do that in the next class. Somehow I'm also not 100%, my problems are still going on, I don't know. I think I'll just keep it to a short class because there's quite a bit more to talk about. The next step, so the last step that we saw is try to make Sattva Guna as the prominent guna in your life. And leave aside the progress towards absolute asangata, but even a peaceful life itself, even with sangata, would be much better with Sattva Guna rather than any other guna. But then there are more steps to take. So we have covered pretty much the first discourse of the week, 1/7. Not completely, there's a bit more to do. But I would imagine that we'll probably do 7 classes. I think maybe more or less, a little bit more, maybe less. But keeping this single topic of asangata as a segment that we will focus on, and see how you feel about that, and then go on to some other topics after that. Okay. So as you know, we will not have a class next 2 weeks. So when we come back on 11th, I believe, of July, we will continue on with these steps of asangata. Om asatoma satkamaya tamasoma jyotirgamaya mrityorma amritam gamaya. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. More to do, but Very good to see you all. Wonderful. So with that, I take your leave and we'll see you in one of the future classes. Hari Om.